Happy noon. This is Dee Dee Jones with Innovative Financial, and you've joined us for another live at noon chat about finances. Let's get personal with your money. It is Wednesday, May 27th, and summer's about upon us. It's awesome. And of course, that brings you to thinking about a fiduciary. Really not? Maybe not. But if you're in the market for working with a financial advisor, it's real important for you to understand the different standards of care that different people in the financial world are held to. One that I'm particularly familiar with is a fiduciary, and you might have heard it. And if you've been looking for an advisor, your friends and family have said you should ask them if they're a fiduciary. But what really does it mean? Obviously, I think you should ask your advisor if they are a fiduciary. Hopefully the answer is yes, but what is that going to mean for you? Let's break this down a little bit. So if you go look at in the dictionary, you might find that a fiduciary is one that holds themselves out in a fiduciary capacity. I hate dictionary definitions like that. It made fifth grade really annoying when you did all those reports. Doesn't really answer your question. If you keep reading down, you'll find out it's relating to, involving confidence or trust, held or founded in trust or confidence, holding in trust, depending on public confidence for value or currency. Blah, blah, blah. Right, what on earth does that mean? Probably not a whole heck of a lot. Confidence, trust, they are helpful. You can kind of start to get an idea. But in the finance world, fiduciary actually has a specific meaning. It means that you're required to act in a way that is in the client's best interest at all times. And anybody who is registered and is an investment advisor, like we are, an RIA, is obligated to meet that standard. If they're in the business of offering advice, they can't put anyone else's interests, including their own, ahead of yours, which is really important. You want unbiased advice. And remember the phrase at all times. We're going to come back to that in a minute. But registered investment advisors are at all times required to put clients' interests ahead of their own. Now, the SEC has different rules. Those are the folks that are stockbrokers. And there is the ability for somebody to actually wear two hats. And those are what we refer to as dually registered, D-U-A-L-L-Y. I can't say that word very clearly. But in other words, they're both a stockbroker and a registered investment advisor. And those folks are allowed to be both a fiduciary sometimes, and sometimes just a salesperson. By way of explanation, let me explain what I mean by this. If you search the internet, you can find a really cute doodle that describes this. But imagine a butcher. If you go into the butcher, you're looking to buy meat, and the butcher is going to do his best to sell you the best meat for what it is you need, right? He's an expert. You're going to him to achieve the best possible meat that he has available that he's going to sell you. You know that when you walk in, you're expecting someone to sell you meat. That he's not going to say, hey, Dee Dee, that's kind of heavy on the meat. Your cholesterol's popping up. Maybe you should head down to the fishmonger or even across the street to the greengrocer and get some healthier food than meat. That's not a butcher's job. His job is to help you within his product array find the best meat that for your needs. That's great. That's what we expect of a butcher. On the other hand, if you're working with a nutritionist, they're going to take measurements and get to know you and understand your lifestyle and your fitness goals and your health goals. And they're going to make recommendations that take into account the whole of your being. It might include meat, but it may not. But their goal isn't necessarily to sell something in their product line, but actually to find suggestions that work for you and your goals and your values. So you can think of stockbrokers and transactional people selling insurance, things like that, as butchers. We need butchers. Butchers are important. They do what they do. Financial advisors are more like dietitians, where they're going to come in, they're going to look at your holistic situation and make recommendations that they feel in their expertise is best for you. So those are the two situations that we find ourselves under right this minute. And like I say, there is the possibility for some dual registration advisors to jump back and forth between being a butcher and a dietitian, which it's good to know that that's what you're dealing with. If you have a relationship with someone like that, it's probably important at the beginning or even as you go through conversations to ask which hat that they're wearing so that you understand what is happening. Are you dealing with the dietitian or are you talking to the butcher? Because that's going to change how you hear what they're suggesting. If you ever hear the word fee-based, not fee only, the phrase fee-based, that's someone who has the ability to change hats. Fee only, that's the dietitian all the time. The fiduciary all the time. Fee-based, that's someone who can change hats, that can be the dietitian and the butcher. Again, nothing wrong with this, but as consumers, I think that this is a really crazy, complicated world. And the only reason I bring it up today, other than that's good information, is it's about to get just a little bit more complicated. The SEC has released something called their best interest standard, which is going to replace the suitability standard. So the butcher model is going to change just a little bit. The new standard is being brought about by Reg BI, best interest, and it's going to require that brokers, the product salespeople, act in their client's best interest when making securities transactions recommendations. Wow, that kind of sounds like fiduciary. The rule requires adherence to 4 key obligations: disclosure, care, conflicts and how they're managed, and compliance. This sounds good, Dee Dee. Great. What's really interesting is why isn't the new rule just fiduciary and best interest? Why are they just not interchangeable? Well, the SEC has explicitly not said the word fiduciary, and they haven't defined what the phrase best interest means. So because they are explicitly not saying fiduciary, we're left saying, okay, if it isn't fiduciary, then what is it? And that particular question is now in the courts. So, by the way, it took them 1,100 pages to come up with this best interest structure. So it's complicated, confusing, and as consumers, again, I question how helpful it can be. So that's not the only confusing part. To meet the new standard, broker-dealers have to disclose their conflicts of interest to clients, which fiduciaries already do that, use care when making those recommendations, address the conflicts of interest, and generally otherwise be in compliance. The other interesting thing is that financial professionals registered only with broker-dealers won't be able to use the word advisor anymore, ADVISOR, right? So if you're just at the broker-dealer and not under an RIA, you can't be an advisor. But if you have that dual registration again, you can be an advisor. So I think it's just, again, confusing. Nothing wrong with butchers versus dietitians. It's just the issue as consumers. How do we help people understand who are they working with and what's the standard of care that they're required to follow? So there are 7 states and some professional organizations who are suing the SEC over these rules, trying to keep them from becoming law because they feel that it doesn't protect consumers as well as the current law does. Although, in my opinion, it muddies the water a little bit. There's a lack of clarity. And if we want brokers to be fiduciaries, let's just make them fiduciaries. We don't need to go through all of this hoopla. So we'll see. But those court cases are pending as we speak, and we might get some confirmation of either continued confusion or more clarity going forward. But it's real important that you understand what a fiduciary is and why it's important to know the difference. Are you going to the butcher because you already know you need whatever that product is, be it securities, insurance, etc., or are you going to a dietitian because you want someone to look at your overall situation and make recommendations specifically in your best interests? Know what you want, and from there you can Google search and find folks who meet that need for you online. We're RIAs and CPA, and so we are held to a fiduciary standard all of the time. We're happy to have done that and have done that since we started business in 2003. Boy, it's been a long time. But we'll continue to be here for you, and love that you join us on these Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays live. And send us your questions and comments. Perhaps we can cover a topic that's important to you in the future. Have a lovely Wednesday, and we'll see you on Friday.